The ship drifted silently above Earth, its sleek silver body reflecting the soft light of the rising sun. Inside, Zyra adjusted her sensors, her 6 limbs moving with careful precision. This was her first mission, to observe humans in their natural environment. The reports from her species had called them primitive, yet curiously unpredictable. Zyra had expected a simple task: watch, record, and analyze. But from the moment she saw the first humans through the viewports, she knew this mission would not be simple. Her sensors immediately picked up a wave of energy she had never encountered. Humans were warm, not just in body temperature, but in a way that seemed to radiate life itself. Zyra's analytical mind tried to process it. Heat signatures usually indicated a biological organism, but this was something different. Something alive, chaotic, and vibrant. Her heart, or the alien equivalent, thumped harder, a reflex she did not fully understand. She recoiled slightly, though there was nothing threatening in their gestures. One human laughed loudly, the sound echoing through the open fields, and Zyra felt an involuntary shiver of awe. The human was so full of energy, so unrestrained. Zyra's internal sensors began to beep erratically. She took a step back. Her mission protocols did not include this reaction. None of the simulations had predicted panic from presence alone. The human walked closer, completely unaware of the alien observer, radiating warmth like a small sun. Zyra felt her circuits almost overload. She could not look away. The human's heat, literal and figurative, seemed to burn into her, filling her mind with sensations she had no words for. It was not danger. It was excitement, vitality, life itself. Zyra had observed many species before, but humans were different. Their movements were random, their laughter uncontrolled, their energy uncontainable, and it was all contagious. Zyra's claws clicked against the floor as she tried to step back, but her curiosity anchored her in place. The human turned suddenly, eyes wide as if sensing her presence. Zyra froze. She had not anticipated detection. Her species had always relied on stealth, observation, and logic. But humans had intuition, a chaotic awareness that could sense even subtle movements. The human waved a hand and spoke a string of sounds that made no sense to Zyra's vocal processors. Yet there was warmth in the tone, a friendly, open energy. Zyra tried to respond with the standard communication signal, a series of light pulses and harmonic vibrations, but the human tilted their head, laughing again. That laugh, bright, fearless, alive, made Zyra's sensors spike in a way she had never recorded. "What is happening?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling slightly. She was trained to remain calm, to observe without emotional interference, and yet the human's presence made her feel unbalanced. She stepped back, her limbs jittering in a way she didn't intend. The human did not retreat. Instead, they approached with slow curiosity, their eyes wide and open, scanning the strange figure before them. They radiated something beyond heat. Zyra would later understand it as determination, adaptability, and the endless drive to explore. But for now, she could only feel the overwhelming energy, a force that seemed almost physical, burning into her sensors. Zyra's panic grew. She tried to analyze, to categorize, to control her reactions. She scanned the human's body, noting the heat distribution, the pulse, the rapid, irregular fluctuations in movement. But the data made no sense. Every heartbeat seemed amplified, resonating outward like a drum in a quiet canyon. Every breath carried energy that could not be measured in numbers alone. Her circuits began to hum, her sensors recording anomalies at levels previously thought impossible. She had trained for years for first contact, but she had not trained for a species that could overwhelm her so completely without even touching her. The human reached out a hand, palm open. Zira froze. She had learned in simulations that human gestures could indicate threat, communication, or play. She did not know which this was, and yet there was no fear in the human stance, only curiosity, vitality, life. Zira stepped back, and her sensors flared again. She could feel the warmth of the human's body penetrating her own biofield, a sensation that made her chest tighten and her thoughts scatter. She realized, with growing terror and awe, that this was the first time she had felt truly alive in a way she could not control. She panicked, not in fear, but in wonder. Her species had always prided itself on logic, control, and analysis. Humans were impossible. They defied all predictions. Their very existence radiated energy that burned into Zira's mind, reshaping her understanding of life and vitality. The human laughed again, stepping closer, and Zira's panic intensified. She wanted to retreat, to hide, to analyze safely from a distance, but something held her in place. She could not look away. The human was everything chaotic and brilliant about life, and for the first time, Zira felt the raw, overwhelming ecstasy of encountering something completely new and alive. Her mind raced. She ran through all known protocols: observe, record, communicate, retreat. But none seemed sufficient. The human's warmth was more than temperature. It was energy, life, resilience. Zira's species had catalogued countless species across the galaxy, but none radiated in this way. For a moment she considered retreating to the ship. But something deep inside, something her logical brain could not name, urged her to stay. The human's energy, wild and unrestrained, was magnetic. It pulled her in, demanding attention, respect, and awe. Zira felt herself trembling, her body reacting to the human's presence in ways she could not control. Her sensors, designed to measure heat and energy, were overwhelmed. She tried to calm herself, but the human laughed again, vibrant and uncontainable, and Zira realized she was utterly exposed to the intensity of life she had come to study. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling but clear. I do not understand. Your body, your heat, it burns into me." The human tilted their head, blinked, and smiled brightly. Zira had no translation for the expression, but she felt its meaning immediately. Acceptance, curiosity, and something like encouragement. Zira's mind whirled. She was an observer, a scholar, a scientist. And yet, she had never felt so unprepared, so overwhelmed, so alive. She realized that this first contact was not just about studying humans. It was about experiencing them, understanding them in a way no simulation or protocol could ever allow. And so, she stayed, trembling and fascinated, letting the human's energy wash over her. Her panic was ecstatic, a storm of awe, confusion, and exhilaration. She did not yet understand why humans affected her so profoundly, but she knew one thing with certainty. Her mission had just become the most important and most exhilarating task of her life. The human reached out again, this time closer, their warmth washing over Zira in waves. Zira's sensors went into overload, her circuits buzzing, her mind nearly breaking with the intensity. She could not categorize it, could not analyze it. She could only feel. And she felt alive, more alive than she had ever known. Zira's circuits were still buzzing from the encounter. Every step the human took sent new waves of energy through her sensors, waves she had no control over. She had studied countless species, traveled to planets where life was so alien it could barely be recognized, yet nothing had ever made her feel this alive. The human moved through the tall grass with ease, their bare feet brushing against the green blades. Zira noticed how the human's energy changed the surroundings subtly. Plants seemed to respond, birds took flight, and a soft wind carried the sound of laughter. It was chaotic, yet somehow harmonious. Zyra felt her panic deepen, but not with fear. It was an ecstatic panic, a feeling of both wonder and overwhelm at the same time. Zyra tried to step back, intending to analyze safely from a distance, but each step made her feel more and more connected to the human. She could feel the rhythm of their heartbeat in the air around them, a pulse of raw vitality she could not measure. Her species' scientific instruments could record temperature, energy levels, or movement, but they could not measure life force, and that was exactly what she felt. "Why does it feel like this?" Zyra whispered to herself. Her voice was soft, trembling. She had never admitted confusion before. She had never allowed herself to feel like this. And yet, the human's presence demanded a response that went beyond logic. The human noticed Zyra's hesitation and took another careful step forward. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity, observing Zyra as if she were just as strange as she found them. That gaze, open, fearless, and inquisitive, made Zyra's chest tighten. She wanted to retreat, but she could not. Something inside her demanded she stay. Zyra activated her translation device, trying to communicate formally. A series of harmonic pulses and soft glows emerged from her body. The human blinked, tilted their head, and let out another bright, uncontainable laugh. It was not mocking, but pure expression, full of life. And Zyra panicked again. Not in fear, but in a strange, ecstatic confusion. Her systems tried to record the laugh, measure it, categorize it, but the data made no sense. It was not just sound, it was energy, spreading outwards and affecting everything it touched. Zyra felt a heat inside her, a warmth she could not explain. She took another step back, tripping over a rock. The human rushed forward, steadying her with a hand. Zyra froze at the touch. It was gentle, not invasive, and yet it sent an electric surge through her circuits, a new type of connection she could not process. She had felt touch before, but never like this. The human's energy radiated through their body into hers, creating a sensation that was overpowering and exhilarating at once. Zyra stumbled backward again, her limbs shaking. Her internal sensors beeped frantically. She could feel every pulse, every breath of the human as if it were her own. Her mind raced, trying to understand, trying to regain control. I cannot control it," Zyra admitted, voice quivering. "Your presence, it burns into me. I cannot calculate, I cannot analyze. It overwhelms me." The human smiled, still calm and open, and made a small, playful gesture with their hands. Zyra watched closely, trying to mimic it. Her attempts were clumsy, but the human laughed again. The sound reverberated in Zyra's chest, and she felt herself laugh in response, even though her species did not usually express emotion this way. Something inside Zyra shifted. She realized that humans did not try to hide their energy, their vitality, or their unpredictability. Every movement, every laugh, every gesture was full of life, and it was impossible to resist. Zyra felt herself absorbing it, becoming part of this chaotic, vibrant energy field. Hours seemed to pass in moments. Zyra and the human moved through the field, exploring, observing, reacting. Every step, every sound, every interaction caused her systems to overload with data she could not process logically. But she did not try to stop. She let herself be carried by the wave of life that the human generated. At one point, the human stopped and picked up a small stone, tossing it into the air and catching it again. Zyra watched in fascination. She noticed the way the human's eyes followed the motion, the way their fingers moved with perfect coordination. Even in play, there was precision, creativity, and instinct, qualities that Zyra had always thought of as separate from chaos. Yet the human combined them effortlessly. Zyra attempted to mimic the action, tossing a small rock with one of her clawed hands. She missed entirely. The human laughed, bright and unself-conscious, and offered guidance. Zyra's sensors recorded every movement, every adjustment, and for the first time she felt learning in real time through interaction rather than observation. The sun began to dip toward the horizon. Its light painted the field in hues of gold and orange. Zira felt the warmth of the human intensify as shadows stretched. She realized it was not just physical warmth she experienced. It was the energy of persistence, creativity, and adaptability. Humans radiated something beyond biology, a vitality that inspired awe, fascination, and yes, panic, because it could not be controlled or fully understood. The human finally sat down on the grass, patting the ground beside them. Zira hesitated but felt a pull she could not resist. She settled beside the human, still buzzing, still trembling, still overwhelmed. She noticed how calm the human was, as if the chaos of life was normal to them. They radiated confidence, resilience, and joy. Zira realized that she had been trained to fear the unknown, to react only with logic. But humans operated differently. They thrived on chaos. They drew strength from unpredictability. They were alive in a way that went beyond measurable energy or heat. Zira's mind raced, trying to make sense of it. She failed, but she no longer cared. I do not understand your species, Zira admitted softly. But I want to. The human smiled again, warmth radiating outward, and said something in their language. Zira could not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. Welcome, stay, learn. Be alive with us. Zira felt herself relax slightly, though her chest still hummed with exhilaration. Her sensors were still overloaded, but instead of panic, there was excitement, a sense of possibility. She realized that humans were not just fascinating to study, they were inspiring, challenging, and alive in ways she had never imagined. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. Zira observed the human perform simple tasks, picking plants, moving stones, gesturing at distant birds. Every action created ripples of energy she could feel radiating through the field, through the air, through her very circuits. She began to understand, in fragments, the truth she had been avoiding. Humans were a force of nature, a living, breathing energy that could not be contained, predicted, or fully understood. And yet, Zira did not recoil. She embraced it. She let herself feel the chaos, the warmth, the vitality. Her panic had turned into exhilaration. She was still overwhelmed, still breathless, but now with wonder rather than fear. She could sense her own mind expanding, adjusting to the reality of humans. The sun set completely, leaving the field in darkness. The human remained, calm and vibrant, their presence a steady pulse of energy in the night. Zira felt herself tremble again, but this time with understanding. She was not afraid of the human. She was amazed. For the first time in her life, Zira realized that her mission had changed. Observation was no longer enough. She needed to experience, to learn, to adapt, and perhaps even to emulate the human ability to thrive in chaos. Her first encounter had been a panic of the senses, an ecstatic storm she could not control. But it had also been the beginning of something extraordinary. Humans were more than their bodies, more than their warmth, more than their energy. They were alive, and they demanded recognition, respect, and awe. Zira took a deep, steadying breath. She could not fully explain what she felt. She could not yet analyze it. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Humans were not simply to be studied. They were to be experienced. And she was ready for the next step. The night was quiet, yet the field seemed alive. Zira sat beside the human, still trembling with the echoes of earlier sensations. She had never imagined that mere presence could have such an effect on her circuits and her mind. Her species had mastered countless technologies, controlled entire ecosystems, and explored galaxies. But humans radiated a power that was unquantifiable. Zira shifted slightly, scanning the human. They were calm, serene even, but every breath, every heartbeat, every motion carried energy that reached out and demanded attention. Zira realized that it was not fear or danger that humans inspired. It was awe. She tried to speak again, her voice unsteady. "Your energy, it is unlike anything I have measured. It penetrates me. It reshapes my understanding of life." The humans smiled softly. They pointed to the stars above, then gestured to Zira, then made a sweeping motion across the horizon. Zira did not understand the words, but she understood the meaning. The universe is vast, but humans meet it with life, curiosity, and courage. Zira's mind whirled. She began to analyze the human again, not as a set of biological data, but as a force of nature. Every heartbeat, every movement, every unplanned action radiated purpose, resilience, and energy. Her earlier panic had not been a failure of logic. It had been a lesson in existence itself. Humans were alive in ways her species had never imagined. She stood, wanting to explore more, to understand more. The human followed, stepping lightly over rocks and grass. Zira noticed the effortless balance and awareness in every step. Humans seemed to interact with their world rather than dominate it, moving in harmony with their surroundings while still shaping them. Zira attempted to mirror their movements, and in doing so she noticed something remarkable. Humans adapted instantly. Small mistakes were not frustrating. They were learning moments. A misplaced step became an adjustment. A dropped object became an experiment. Every moment carried potential, and every action was alive with energy. Her sensors, which had been overwhelmed before, began to process differently. Zira realized that humans were not simply alive. They were alive in ways that rewrote the rules. Logic, analysis, and measurement could describe their actions, but they could not capture their essence. Humans existed on a level beyond mere data. Their energy shaped the environment and even the observer. The human stopped at a small stream, watching the water ripple over smooth stones. Zira crouched beside them, fascinated. She had studied thousands of water systems across countless worlds, but watching the humans' reflection of themselves in the water, the gentle tilt of their head, the subtle movements of their hands, it was mesmerizing. The human's energy interacted with the stream, the air, the stars. Zira felt herself drawn into the rhythm. For the first time, she understood what her earlier panic had been. It was a collision between her logical systems and a living force she could not control or fully comprehend. And that force was humans. Their vitality, creativity, and unpredictability had burned into her mind, reshaping her understanding of intelligence and life. "Humans," Zira whispered. "You are extraordinary." The human looked at her with what could only be described as gentle amusement. They stepped forward, pointing at a stone, then at the water, then back at Zira. It was an invitation to interact, to participate, to experience. Zira hesitated. She had always been an observer, never a participant, and yet here she wanted to join. She reached out her clawed hands, touching the water lightly. The stream rippled, sparkling in the moonlight. The human mirrored her, touching the water in a different spot. Zira's circuits hummed, not with panic this time, but with curiosity and wonder. She was no longer overwhelmed. She was engaged. Hours passed. Zira and the human moved through the field, interacting with plants, rocks, and the night air. Zira realized that humans were alive in ways that went beyond individual existence. They influenced everything around them. Their energy radiated outward, affecting the environment, shaping perception, and inspiring those who observed them. Zira's earlier panic had been a warning. This species was not ordinary. It was revolutionary. She looked at the human, truly studying them for the first time. Every feature, every movement, every pulse of energy was alive. Zira understood something profound. Humans were not just another species to study. They were a force of life, unpredictability, and creativity that could challenge even the most advanced civilizations. The human laughed again, bright and fearless. Zira felt the sound ripple through her circuits, causing sparks of exhilaration she could barely contain. She had thought humans were merely interesting, perhaps even chaotic, but now she knew they were inspiring, capable of teaching even the most disciplined species lessons about vitality, adaptation, and presence. Zira stepped back, observing the human's energy field more clearly. She saw how it interacted with the environment, how it drew life toward itself, how it created small patterns of influence simply through existence. Every movement, every laugh, every breath was a demonstration of life's potential. For the first time, Zira considered her own species' limitations. They had mastered technology, conquered worlds, and explored the galaxy. But they lacked the spark, the raw vitality that humans carried naturally. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and unmeasurable, and that was their power. She realized she had been wrong to think of humans as primitive. They were not. They were evolutionary marvels, capable of thriving and inspiring in ways her species could only dream of. The panic she had felt at first contact had been a recognition of this truth. Her circuits had overloaded not because humans were dangerous, but because they were extraordinary. Zira's panic transformed fully into exhilaration. She understood that her mission had shifted. Observation alone would not suffice. She needed to experience, learn, and grow alongside humans. She wanted to understand how their vitality, adaptability, and unpredictability could be applied, not just observed. The human noticed her focus and stepped closer, their presence warm and encouraging. Zira felt the energy radiate through her once more, but this time it was controllable, inspiring, and motivating. She realized that humans did not just live, they influenced, shaped, and inspired every being they encountered, and she wanted to be part of that experience. Finally, Zira spoke clearly, her voice steady for the first time. I understand now. Your species is extraordinary. Not in numbers, not in tools, not in technology, but in life itself, in energy, in vitality, in the way you exist. The human smiled, as if acknowledging her realization. They extended a hand, and Zira hesitated for only a moment before placing her own over it. A surge of energy passed between them, not violent, not harmful, but illuminating, thrilling, and alive. Zira felt the meaning of humans in that single touch. They were capable of transforming anyone who engaged with them. The night passed. Stars wheeled overhead, planets shimmered in distant skies, and the field seemed alive with the echoes of human energy. Zira no longer panicked. She no longer felt overwhelmed. She felt alive. She had experienced her first contact fully, not as an observer, but as a participant. She had felt humans' heat, their energy, their vitality, and it had burned into her in ways she could never forget. As dawn approached, Zira stood and looked out over the horizon. The human remained beside her, radiating confidence, vitality, and creativity. Zira realized that she had not only discovered the secret of humans, she had discovered the secret of life itself. Humans thrived because they embraced chaos, radiated energy, and lived fully in every moment. Their presence was transformative, their spirit uncontainable, their vitality undeniable. Zira understood that in studying humans, she had also learned to expand her own existence. She turned to the human and whispered, "Your life, your energy, it changes everything it touches. I am changed." The human smiled brightly, their simple warmth spreading outward like sunlight. Zira felt it wash over her one last time, a lasting impression that would shape her forever. And for the first time she knew without doubt that humans were a species to be celebrated, admired, and learned from, not simply studied. They were alive in a way that transcended logic, defied prediction, and inspired awe in any being fortunate enough to encounter them. Her mission had begun as observation. It had evolved into experience, understanding, and revelation. Zira understood now why her species had underestimated humans. They were not just alive, they were a force of life itself, radiant, unstoppable, and transformative, and Zira could not wait to see how far their energy would reach.